Yo, what is up, ladies and gentlemen? It is your boy Zether here, and I am here to drop the finale for What If Deku Was the Red Hood. Now, in case you guys haven't seen the first part to this series, the link will be up below. You guys should be seeing a little card up on screen right now, but in case you have, then you should be good. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, seeing as it is going to be the finale to this part, as well as if you haven't subscribed, make sure you hit that red button already, seeing as you guys want to be part of the greatest What If army on YouTube. That being said, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so we started our story off right where we had left off. It's at this point that Deku would finish wrapping up grabbing all his stuff. He would then go outside, to which there would actually be a car there. Deku would raise an eyebrow at this and be like, "What?" And this is when Aizawa would step out, as he would say, "Get in, kid." Deku would say, "Seriously?" And Aizawa would say, "Yeah, let's go." Deku would get into the car and he would look towards Aizawa. Aizawa would basically just lean his head back and he would basically pass out. At this point, Deku would just whip out his phone and he'd start chuckling to himself, thinking that, yeah, that's a lot like him. As Deku would look towards Aizawa's direction, he would just be thinking about how grateful he is to him. This is when Deku would finally arrive at Aizawa's house. He would shower, put on his work clothes, and then head out to work. On this day, Deku would kind of just be behind the counter and he would kind of just be taking some random orders. At this point, Deku kind of is at his job just like usual, and it's when out of nowhere Deku would have basically gone over there to, just check up on the food and check up on how everybody's doing. As they would basically look at Deku would look at the person who's at the counter, as he would see one of his coworkers. She's actually terrified as she has both of her hands up. Deku would notice that it's a mugger, as Deku would immediately realize what he has to do. He would immediately grab a spatula that was laying down right next to him and he would whip it right at the mugger. As it would hit the gun straight out of his head, immediately Deku would rush at him, jump over the counter and tackle him, as he would start punching him square in the jaw. Just bam, bam, bam. At this point, the guy would start getting would get beaten to a pulp pretty much. He would get beaten to a pulp. Deku would then get off of him, and this one his coworker would say, "Whoa, you're amazing." Deku would look at her and say, "No, I had to stop this guy." As he'd basically put the gun in a little bag, he would then call the police, and this is when they would all arrive. As this is when basically everything would kind of go as you guys would expect. Now, this is when Deku would actually be told by his manager that he actually did a pretty great job and he's going to be getting a promotion. Deku would get pretty happy about that, seeing as he's going to be promoted to manager now. And Deku would be smiling, thinking that things are looking up for him. Things are definitely looking up for him. Deku, after this, of course, would go home, to which he would see Aizawa and he would then tell him the good news. Aizawa would look at him and say, "That's pretty good, kid. Well, it's a little bit of a shame." As Deku would look at Aizawa and say, "What?" He would look at him as he would say, "You're never going to have to pay for things ever again, kid. Look, I need to talk to you. You are going to UA, and honestly, I don't even think it's possible to balance a job and the schoolwork, as well as the training that you do for at least 3 hours a day. There's no way. You're not getting any proper sleep, and your body's not going to, well, keep up with you if you keep up like this. I'm going to need you to come back home. You're going to have a little bit of an allowance with me as long as you behave in school." Deku would look at Aizawa as he would say, "Really?" As Aizawa would look at him and say, "Kid, when have I ever lied to you?" Deku would say, "Never." As Aizawa would look at Deku, he would then say, "All right, now get your stuff, call out, you're done working." Deku would look at Aizawa and smile, as he would think that this is the first time he's ever gotten to just do nothing. Like, I mean, I guess he's gonna go to school and train, but like, no more work. That's awesome. It's at this point that Deku would start smiling, and the very next day at UA would basically go down as it would in the original canon. In this version, the Ida situation with the press would still happen, and this basically means that, Ida basically gets put as class rep. In this version, he was already the class rep, so people were able to, hear him out better, and people were able to understand him a little better just due to the fact that he and Uraraka ended up clutching everything up, and they basically ended up getting everyone's attention. And yeah, This leads to about 1 week of normal school life. Like everybody's basically having everything go by as a normal school. There's really nothing too crazy going on. And this one I'm just basically going to fast forward to the day of the USJ attack. Now, it's at this point in time where Deku and everybody else would be on the bus, to which they would all just kind of be jamming out. Deku would be in the back wearing some headphones, kind of just ignoring everything that's going on around him. And Bakugo would be sitting all the way at the front, just next to Aizawa, as Aizawa decided that, yeah, he's not going to let anything happen with him. So Bakugo's pretty much staying quiet, and everybody else on the bus is just like, who do you guys think is the strongest in the class? That's Tsuyu, of course, and then everybody would start giving off their answers. They would say that Todoroki seems to be the strongest. Deku, not even hearing what's going on, just kind of stays silent, and people just start saying, what about that Midoriya kid? He seems pretty powerful. People would look towards Deku's direction, and Deku would wonder what's going on. As he would take off his headphones, he would hear the conversation and then just be like, oh, that doesn't matter. As Deku would put the headphones back on, he would then look towards Todoroki's direction, as he would think that that kid is kind of strong. It's going to be pretty hard to deal with him if I ever have to fight him someday. As Deku would then look away, and he would just go back to just being in his own little world. It's at this point where they would arrive, and this is when they would, of course, basically just be told by the Hero 13 about everything. She would go over and start covering her lame speech, and Deku would kind of just be sitting next to Aizawa, just kind of like, dude, when is this going to be over? Aizawa would look at Deku and smile a little bit, as he would say that, yeah, she tends to talk a little bit too much. As Deku just says, yeah, a little way too much. Aizawa would start chuckling, and Deku would look at him as he would basically crack a little bit of a joke. This is when Deku would look towards Aizawa, and right as he does that, Deku basically let his full guard down. Immediately, a portal would arrive in front of them, as this of course would be Kurogiri. Kurogiri would begin to open multiple portals around the area, and this is when Deku would look at what's happening. A bunch of villains would have immediately started dropping in different areas, and Kurogiri would have immediately proceeded to instantly look at Aizawa, and basically they would jump down as immediately. Wait, I'm confusing myself. Hold on. Give me a second. I just jumbled up my words, and I'm not gonna lie, I was playing Subway Surfers as I was saying that, but here, let me fix what I said. Kurogiri would basically arrive. He would begin to teleport all of the students away, and due to the fact that Deku was not where he was standing originally, Deku wouldn't end up getting teleported away with everybody else. This means that Bakugo and Kirishima would still end up rushing at, Kurogiri, but Deku wouldn't get teleported to the boat. Meaning that Mineta and Tsuyu would die. Due to the fact that there's no Deku to be like, smash! They would end up eventually just getting overrun by the villains. Due to the fact that Mineta and Tsuyu have no experience, they would basically die. And these villains don't care about that. So 2 students would definitely have their lives lost today. Deku and Aizawa would arrive down below, as they would both start to assess the situation. There was 34 people in front of them. Deku would look at Aizawa as he would say that, do you think we can do it? Aizawa would say that it's going to be a piece of cake, as Deku would start smiling. He would then activate his quirk, and this is when Aizawa would start deactivating almost everybody's quirk around them, as he would start deactivating everybody's quirk except for Deku, as he and Deku would start tag teaming each and every single one of the villains. In case you guys are watching some of the gameplay in the background, basically what Batman and Nightwing do in this part is essentially what Deku and Aizawa are doing. Well, if I use the Batman and Nightwing gameplay, I don't know, it depends on whether I use that one or the other one that I have recorded. But that being said, basically they would tag team them just like Batman and Robin would to a bunch of thugs, and this is when after they basically take down all of the villains that they had to, Shigaraki would say, Nomu, kill that. As before he could even finish that sentence, Deku would have already started rushing towards the Nomu, and it's at this point that Shigaraki would say, kid. As it's at that point that Deku throws a punch straight at Shigaraki's face, sending him crashing back. The Nomu would then look at Deku, as it would punch at Deku's direction, but Deku would grab the arm, spin over it, and on some Goku Ultra Instinct stuff, Deku would dodge the hit and hit the Nomu square in the jaw. But the Nomu wouldn't even react. It would just be standing there as if it's mindless. Deku would then realize what's going on. This thing doesn't understand what's going on. Aizawa deactivated its quirk. As right as that happens, the Nomu would land 2 hits on Deku. One at the face and one at the ribs. 2 of Deku's ribs would have broken and his jaw would have been dislocated. Deku would crash into one of the walls, and Aizawa would then rush at the Nomu, giving Deku a couple seconds to basically try to hold himself off. And This is when the Nomu would start eventually berating Aizawa. He would start destroying him slowly. He would land punch after punch on Aizawa, and Deku would then look towards Aizawa's direction as he would say, "No!" Eventually, he would basically open his suit, to which he would be revealed that he has a bunch of tactical weapons. He would throw it straight at the Nomu's brain, to which the Nomu would then get startled for a second, and Deku would then realize, the brain, that's the weak spot. It heals the slowest out of all of the other parts. Deku would immediately throw another one at it, but the Nomu would catch it mid-hand, and the hand would then start freezing. As the hand would fall off, the Nomu would then regenerate immediately, and it would roar at Deku's direction, to which Aizawa would say, "No." And it's when Aizawa would basically have his head crushed into the ground that Deku would immediately, his rage would overflow him, and he would start rushing towards the Nomu. The Nomu would then rush right back at Deku, and it would begin to screech out. As Deku would rush at it, the Nomu would as well. They would throw a punch at each other, but the Nomu would end up missing, and Deku would end up landing it right at the Nomu's gut. He would actually punch straight through him, and the Nomu would then be like, "Yeah!" like it would like let out like a weird noise, I guess you could say, like a pain Nomu screech, right? It's at this point that the Nomu would then grab Deku's skull and starts crushing it with his hand, to which Aizawa would throw his scarf at him and then pull it back, and the Nomu would then start not being able to do anything to Deku. This is when Deku would look at the Nomu and he would think that this thing is way too strong. There's no way they're gonna be able to defeat it unless he uses this. He only has one of them that's powerful enough to destroy this Nomu. Deku would take out a batarang and jam it into the Nomu's head, shocking the Nomu and starting to slow down the Nomu's movements. This is when Deku would basically try to jump up again and jab another batarang in there to finish the job, but the Nomu would shatter Deku's mask with a punch, and it would then start to beat on Deku horribly. With Aizawa then rushing back over trying to help Deku, Deku would then start getting beaten slowly by the Nomu. But this is when Aizawa would look at Deku and just tell him that he has to do it now. As Deku, with one arm mangled, he would grab the batarang, stab it into the Nomu's brain. As the Nomu would then screech out in pain, the head would explode, and the Nomu would go everywhere. This is when they would both stand up, with Deku with one broken arm, Shigaraki with his head bloodied and battered, and one arm mangled. They would both look towards Shigaraki and Kurogiri's direction, to which Shigaraki would smile and say, "Kurogiri, now, use the portals." As he would stick his hand through the portals, he would then start trying to touch each and every single one of them, but they would start dodging them. And this is when Deku would start slowly slowing down. Deku's movements would start to get a lot sluggish, seeing as the pain tolerance was going down. His quirk, it was failing him. And this is when Deku would dodge all the hits. Shigaraki would try to touch him from his legs, his arms, his throat, everywhere, but Deku would slowly start dodging it. And this is when Deku would end up cutting off one of Shigaraki's hands with one of the knives that he had on him, to which Shigaraki would use his other hand as he screeches in pain, and he would grab Deku by the face with all 5 fingers. This is when Deku would immediately realize what happens. His eyes would widen and he would immediately start to disintegrate. Aizawa would look at Deku's direction as he would see Deku die. Right as this happens, All Might would bust through the door as he would say, "I am here!" And this is when Shigaraki would screech out as he would say, "Nomu, let's go!" They would immediately get teleported out of there, and Aizawa would be left screaming there on his knees, holding Deku up as he would scream to the heavens. And this is where the scene goes black. We pick up our story right back up when they're at their funeral, and Deku is dead. Aizawa is standing there just completely in shock, wondering if maybe if he would have just let that kid stay over there in that alleyway that he found him, maybe things would be different. Maybe that kid wouldn't be a pro hero, but at least he'd be alive. It was his fault. All Might would put his hand over Aizawa's shoulder and tell him that that kid would have never wanted him to think like that. And he's right. Deku would never want Aizawa to be upset. And in his final moments, it's not like Deku was upset or screamed at Aizawa. He didn't have any fear in his eyes. He was smiling. Deku was smiling right at his last moment. As soon as the hand touched Deku, Deku looked towards Aizawa as a smile creeped up on his face, and he said, "Thank you." He would slowly start to disintegrate in front of Aizawa, and Aizawa was only there to watch him as he died a slow death. Now, this is where we're basically going to end the story. And in a lot of stories, you don't always win. See, this is an example of one of those stories where everyone is the main character, I guess you could say. Everyone in the world of My Hero Academia technically is the main character for their own stories, but some stories in short, and Deku's in this version of events was one of those. Without having something like All for One, or no, sorry, One for All, there's no way that this version of Deku was going to be able to do anything against the Nomu or Shigaraki, or even Kurogiri for that fact. This version of Deku was heavily trained. Yeah, I feel like maybe with a little bit more training, he would have been able to handle this, maybe with some better equipment, but the sad truth was that he just wasn't prepared for this, and this is how the story ends. What If Deku Was the Red Hood may not be one of the happiest stories on my channel, but it's definitely very, very different, I guess you could say. Not all of my stories end badly, but, you know, I figured that I would end it off like this. I don't know. Something about the Red Hood story just made me feel as if I couldn't just end it off with a happy note for some reason. Like, something about that just rubbed me the wrong way. So this is what you get, and you get what you get. You don't throw a fit. That being said, it has been your boy Zether. Leave a like on the video, and I am out. Peace. Bye.